All right, I want to welcome everybody to another episode of the Shadows podcast. I'm very excited today to have Gerome Sapp here with us. He's a former safety at Notre Dame. He also played professional football as well in the NFL with the Baltimore Ravens and the Indianapolis Colts. Sir, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, man?
Good. You're in Vegas right now, right?
Yeah, man. Loving the weather here in Vegas, even though it was snowing last week, which was kind of creepy.
Yeah.
But other than that, I can't complain at all. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot better than I'm in Alabama, and we've had like tornadoes coming through here all night last night. So I envy
Yeah,
you.
man. Yeah.
So
Well, I hope it was safe there, but yeah, man. None of that.
yeah, it's definitely taking some adjusting from coming from Germany over to here. But before we get started, talking about your football career and all the stuff you're doing now, if you don't mind, educating our audience as to your childhood, your upbringing.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Houston, Texas. Not so good neighborhood. My mom raised me. My dad was pretty much incarcerated most of my youth and a lot of my life. But that almost was a fuel to a burning fire inside, to prove that I could be better than he was, and later on in life, obviously I made amends. And when you get older, you get more mature and you realize people cope with things differently. But growing up, it was a great childhood. I just remember loving to compete and you know just loving the thrill of competition. And whether that ended in wins, losses, I just love to compete. And as a result of that, my brother and I got to be really, really good in sports. And for me, I got to be the number one high school player in the state of Texas, football player in the state of Texas. Um, so it was kind of crazy, getting recruited. There's nothing that can really prepare a kid for that. I mean, it's crazy. You see it on the movies like Blue Chip and
Yeah,
all those. He got
Blindside. Yeah,
yeah, but nothing can really prepare you for it, because you're obviously most of the time you're in your junior year when they start recruiting you. You don't you don't know what you want to wear to school the next day, let alone what college you want to go to. And the coaches are pretty ruthless, as they should be, because recruiting is pretty ruthless. So having all these big name coaches parked outside your house, lined up to come talk to you after school, was it's like, wow. So, but being able to handle that maturely with my mother and putting priorities in place where they can only call certain times, or things like that, that really helped. And then ultimately, I wanted a challenge. And I almost went to University of Texas because Mac Brown was there at the time. They had the number one recruiting class multiple years, and all my friends were going there, and my best friend, who I played football with in high school, was going there. But my mom was basically like, listen, you don't have to stay home. If you want to challenge yourself, you should go challenge yourself somewhere. So ultimately for me, Notre Dame was that challenge. I felt that there was, you couldn't find another mix of academics, tradition, and football, So, and that's no knock on any other school, because I considered a lot of schools, it was SEC, SSC, Stanford, Michigan, Miami, Florida State. I considered a lot of those programs, but with Notre Dame, it was pretty evident that's where I
yeah,
belong. So I ended up majoring in finance there, which really opened my eyes to, man, there's a whole nother world. There's a whole nother world outside of football, but because before then, football was everything. And you're taking general classes and stuff. But once I chose my major, I really knew that I wanted to do something in finance when I
mhm,
retired. And fortunately, or if I didn't get drafted. So fortunate for me, I used to work at Merrill Lynch in the off season or the summer times in my college career. So I'd go home for a month or so, work at Merrill Lynch, come back to school for summer school and summer workouts. And so I got my feet wet really early in financial
yeah,
planning and really, more important, money management. So as a result, I ended up getting drafted by the Ravens. I was fortunate enough. I remember teaching money management classes to the rookies and first year guys, which is just kind of
Like
interesting,
Terrell Suggs, right?
Yeah, that Terrell was in my draft
Yeah.
class. Yep. I still remember him in class, asking all these crazy questions, because at the time he was the youngest guy in the NFL. He was,
Yeah.
I think, only 20 years old when he got drafted. And he was every bit of 20 years old too, which is awesome to see him now that, how he's matured and all that kind of stuff. Um, so, hold on. So got drafted, ended up getting cut my second year, going into my second year. And that was a life-changing experience for me. For young athletes, young professionals, the worst and the best thing that can happen is you lose your job. For a professional athlete, for a football player, because our contracts aren't guaranteed, when you lose that job, you get cut, there's no parachute or there's no net to catch you, and you just hope someone else likes you. And I was young, and you're still under that impression that it's college. You'll be here with these guys for a while. You're like a family. But that was the first time it occurred to me that this really is a business. It's not a family. You can like these people, and you can even, obviously, you respect a lot of the people, but it's a business. And as soon as you, as a young mind, a young player, a young professional, understand the business component of it, then you learn not to take it personal, which I had to go through. But I remember the day I got cut. I remember the feeling that I had, and I was like, man, I hate this feeling, like feeling like a disposable asset, which I was.
Yeah.
Athletes are disposable assets. You have one, his useful life is up, or her useful life is up, and you get rid of that one and you get another one. That's just the way it is. That's the reality. But I hated the way they made me feel when they cut me. So I remember sitting at home, at the time, my wife actually was starting her first day on the job, and I remember thinking, man, like it would be very selfish of me to call her and ruin her day on her
Yeah.
first day. So I remember sitting at home for 7 hours, man, just by myself and thinking about what's next, because I hadn't gotten any calls yet from any teams. And so I remember starting the process of enrolling in Harvard Business School. Obviously, it's a longer process. So I started that process during that 7 hours because I told myself I was going to do everything that I could to make me better. I couldn't worry about anything else. You can just worry about you. How can you make you better? So that's what compelled me to get my MBA in the off seasons. That feeling. So which is what happened. So I ended up getting accepted to Harvard Business School, and in the off seasons, I'd be in Cambridge at Harvard, getting my MBA. So actually later on that night, though, the day I got cut, Coach Dungy called me from the Colts and was like, hey, we wanted to draft you. But as the draft is all kind of crazy stuff that happens. This team picks that player, which shifts now priorities. So, but anyway, he was like, listen, we wanted to draft you. Now we have a chance to sign you. So it was actually interesting. They gave me a signing bonus after I got cut from one team, which was kind of, it's like, man, that's not very normal, and usually they just sign you and you're happy, but those 2 years in Indianapolis were very important for me, I think, as a young man and as a professional, and just as a human. I learned to live life kind of on my terms, within the rules, but how I wanted to live it. I wasn't worried about what people thought, because at that point the worst had happened to me in my professional career. I've been cut, so there's all kind of psychological, emotional things that happen to an athlete. For the first time, they're told in so many words, we don't want you anymore, you're not good enough. Obviously, as I mentioned, it's a business decision, it's not a personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
But going to Indy, I had to essentially rediscover myself as me. And I think was a start of me as an adult. When we all think about moments in our life that, that defined us as a father, us as a husband, or as an adult. Actually that 7 hours that I spent at home while my wife was at work, that was the first real husband decision I think I've ever made. Not ruining her day, even though my day was terrible. But getting to Indy, under Coach Dungy, who was amazing, and playing with Peyton Manning and playing with all those amazing, future Hall of Famers, you learned what excellence was. You learned how it meant to prepare, like not just prepare, but prepare. Like, they drop a ball, do it again. Okay. We don't drop balls. Okay. If you're not going full speed, get out of the drill. We'll get someone in else that can go full speed. Everything was to excellence. And that's why the Colts and Peyton Manning were who they were. They performed at a level so much higher than everyone else. And the cool thing about it was, the type of personalities they were, they brought you up to that level with them. They wanted you to perform at that level, or else, you're only strongest as your weakest link. So, 2 years with the Colts, I get a call in the airport. It's like, hey, Gerome, from Bill Polian, with the GM of the Colts. He said, hey, Gerome, I just want to let you know we traded you back to Baltimore. Thank you for your time and good luck. And I remember thinking, man, that's how it goes to get traded. Like, I thought it was kind of more than that, but it was pretty short and sweet. So back to Baltimore, and I'm now a mature guy. I knew who I really was, and and that was also a great time. 2 more years in Baltimore with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Rex Ryan, and all those great personalities. And I really got to a point where after those 2 years, they didn't sign me back. And I started a company already. And I literally got to the point where I wanted to start competing in the business world. All of my friends from college, high school, started already moving up in the corporate ladder, so to speak, and I realized where I wanted to go after football, I was behind kind of, I was kind of behind, and I kind of saw the right. It was kind of a glass ceiling for me. I felt, just because I was a lower draft pick, teams weren't willing to make, they weren't willing to really risk much on me. And they were always bringing in younger guys, even though they tell me I was better. They'd say they would hope that the younger guy would end up being better because he's cheaper, which makes sense. It's business, right? So I literally retired after 2 years. After the I guess 6 years, 5-6 years, I retired. I told my agent, I said, hey, thank you for everything you've done for me, but this next leg of the journey of my life, I got to do it by myself, on my own, and this football is not involved with that. And I've never looked back. I've never looked back after that phone call, because I was always preoccupied with business. When athletes talk about that void that's missing when they retire, it don't matter what kind of athlete you are. That void, that hole in your heart of you're missing something, and nothing can ever fulfill that. And that's real. Like, you don't even have to be an athlete. You could be, whatever you do and you do well for some period of time, you develop a dependency for it, and, psychologically, there's a mental kind of identity purgatory, kind of like, who am I? Who am I to the world? Who am I to myself? So the way I combated that was business, competing in the business world. I felt, man, I was like, if I attack the business world the same way I attack sports and football, full speed ahead, but obviously smart enough to know when to maneuver, left or right. I thought I could be, I thought I could be okay, and that was it. I never looked back at football because I left it all on the field. If you asked me, do you want one more play? I'd say, for what? Because I still remember my last play, and I still kind of feel my last play too. I gave it all, so that allowed me to really shift my focus on to being an entrepreneur. Well, what I thought I knew about being an entrepreneur, you know, and that's kind of what propelled me later in life. So the first company I started, our first customer was actually the Navy SEALs. So we figured out a
That's
way
Morph
to,
and Thor, right?
yeah, Morph and Throw. Yep. It was an apparel company. So imagine Lululemon, but everything was made out of plastic bottles, you know.
Yep.
And at the time, you know, no one was doing that. Actually, at the time, Nike had played around with, recycled uniforms for the 2008 Olympics. But other than that, Patagonia was playing around with different stuff, but it wasn't performance material though. So, you know, we literally hit a hole in the market, or as they say, a blue ocean of opportunity, and we catapulted. We took advantage of it. And you know, one of the funnest times of my life, and this is real talk, was when we got to go train with the Navy SEALs, when they got to try out the material and we got to train with them. It was almost like, man, I've been missing you guys my whole life. We were like the same type A personalities, competitive. Because my business partners were also football players with me at Notre Dame, and that went on to play in the NFL. So all very type A, very competitive.
That camaraderie.
You know, the camaraderie. That's what you miss. You know, when you retire. And I just remember being around the SEALs and the jokes that they have. You know, it reminding me of the locker room, and we fit right in. You know, and I just remember that I hated leaving. I was like, man, like it was almost like leaving the locker room again, you know? But anyway, you know, that was the first customer, you know, and I remember speaking with these 3 and 4-star generals on the call to sell the product. And I remember thinking after I got off the call with those guys, I could sell anything to anyone now, you know, with the questions they asked and the intensity in which they asked the questions. So I ended up selling out of that company. And basically what got me to Las Vegas was interesting. I saw a shift in the way people were marketing things. You know, as being an athlete, I knew people would come to me and be willing to give me money to promote something that I didn't give a damn about. It happens every day, you know, athlete endorsements. But I knew that
Shaq right now.
Yeah, right. Anything, right? You know, I mean, it's actually pretty funny. Shaq can sell anything. Like, or
he's on every commercial known to man right now.
Yeah, it's good for him, man. But it's still funny too. But I realized that consumers were getting smarter, and the people that were going to be able to sell the products weren't the paid athletes or celebrities. It was your peers. You know, it was your friend, and it was really coming down to influencers. Who do you trust in your life that can influence you? So basically, I wrote a few algorithms, which is funny. Like I wasn't a math guy, but I wrote a few algorithms around social media and how you can track brand specific social influence. Now, at the time, this was brand new. Like, you know, social media was just getting big, you know, so the ability to track who specifically is influential to your brand was brand new. Because at the time, I don't know if you remember, it was a thing called Clout, and they gave you a Clout score. But the Clout score didn't tell Nike or Sony or, you know, BMW or Toyota who was influential to them. Like, it was just a broad score. So anyway, I wrote an algorithm and created a company called Fluencer that literally tracked brand specific social influence. And, you know, the crazy thing is, in a year, it took me 2 years, but in a year's time, I was told no maybe 120 times. Just all the people I went to go talk to, all the VCs and angels. And funny thing about that is Tony Hsieh, rest in peace, was the first no that I got. I flew out to Vegas to pitch him. He was creating a new fund called the Vegas Tech Fund. And he said, you know, Gerome, you're the perfect person to start this company because you understand influence intimately based on your past, you know, profession. But no, I'm going to pass on it for now. And I was like, all right, like, you know, that's cool. And I was like, if you like me as a person doing it, that's all I need to know. And you like the concept. I said, I'll see you in a year. So the funny thing about it, literally 365 days later, he invested in that brand, in that company. And I had to move my family and my whole team out to Las Vegas, and it was amazing. It was a whirlwind, living in Las Vegas and learning the other side of Las Vegas, the tame side, the nature side, which I love, my kids love, everything outside of the strip. And that's what got me here and kept me here. So I've talked a lot, man, but
That's good stuff.
I've done so many things and experienced so many things. I love just, even with MVP, speaking with a lot of the vets, because the vets, they're some of the most, intelligent people. Like, if you get them and you tell me about what they'll talk. They'll talk forever. And it's like, man, you're a PhD in this, basically. And sadly, a lot of them don't have the business knowledge or the financial knowledge to turn that amazing concept into a business, which a lot of people don't. So, one of the joys I have is actually working with vets and helping them write business plans, helping them take that amazing concept that they've been noodling around with for 5-6 years, getting out of their head and on paper and taking that first step, because obviously we all know that first step is the hardest, but it's also the most rewarding too. So, that's me in life. My latest venture, which I just started, is about to launch. It's called Rares. And essentially 2 years ago, I've always been a sneakerhead. But I've always, as I mentioned earlier, loved finance and the stock market and derivatives. And so it occurred to me, like, man, what if you can, turn these high value appreciating sneakers into stocks? So, so let me rewind a little bit. So when people talk about sneakerheads, most people look at it as a kind of an underground kind of, urban, which it is. It started that way, kind of hobby type thing.
Collection.
But, collection. But what most people don't realize is sneakers as an asset class, because it's an asset class now, have collectively outperformed in terms of appreciating gold, the S&P 500, and Apple stock consistently over the past decade. Meaning, if you invested in sneakers, you'd get a bigger return than investing in any of those three things that I've mentioned. It's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry because of the secondary market, meaning there's retail where you go, Foot Locker, you buy a shoe, $100, $200, depending on the type of Jordan it is, probably. You can, depending on the shoe, you can instantly flip that shoe on the secondary market. When I say secondary, it's like StockX, eBay, and make thousands of time return on it instantly, depending on the shoe, the collaboration Jordan did with somebody. For example, the Travis Scotts, those shoes are, when they drop, with $26,000, so basically it's an asset class. So I figured out a way to securitize sneakers with my company Rares. So the problem is access. Most people don't have access to those sneakers at retail price at $200. So they end up having to pay consignment prices, which is the several $1,000s, which then they're priced out, because all they want to do is flip the shoe, or most people want to do is flip the shoe to make money off of it. So what we created was a way to invest in the shoe. So we purchased the shoe. We go through a whole IPO process with the SEC. So our company is regulated by the SEC, and we turn the shoe into a company that you can invest in, and we split it into shares. So during the IPO process on our platform, you buy shares in that shoe, fractional ownership. And once the IPO closes, meaning all the shares available for that particular sneaker, or sneakers plural, are bought, then we get into secondary trading, just like in the stock market. If I didn't get in on that IPO, I can, and you pay $10 a share, I'll say, hey, I want to give you $11 or $12 a share, because I know this shoe is going to appreciate. you could trade on the secondary market, like I said, just like the stock market. And then at a certain price or a certain point, when that shoe plateaus in value, we liquidate it, and everyone invested in it will presumably make money, assuming that the liquidation price, was higher than the IPO price, which in our case, the only shoes we deal with appreciate. So that's really fun, because part of that is educating for me, educating people on how to invest, terms of investment, and really fractional ownership. Most people can't buy a $50,000 or $200,000 sneaker, which there's a lot of those sneakers out there, but you can buy a share in that sneaker or multiple shares for $5 or $10 a share.
That's interesting.
And then, obviously when the value of the sneaker increases, so do the value of the shares you own in that sneaker. So, this is a fun company. We've already, TechCrunch did a story on us and actually doing another feature on us. So anyway, man, I'm full of stories and ideas, man, but that's what I'm working on now. Yep.
Got a bunch of friends that are sneakerheads, so that's good stuff. I'm already sitting there thinking, I'm gonna be messaging these people as soon as I get done with this. Where do you see yourself like 5 years from now?
Man, that's a great question. Happy. I see myself happy, man. Like, having done everything that I've done in life and just been fortunate and blessed, lucky, you learn how to live life better for yourself, meaning you learn how to not say yes to everything. You learn, that there's certain boundaries that you have to set for yourself and other people too. And if you live by those boundaries and those rules, then you generally go to bed happy at night. And for me, with my two sons, just seeing them grow and mature, they're 11 and 7. And, that, since I didn't have a father growing up, I think I'm hypersensitive to being there for them. No matter what I'm doing in business, it's secondary to my sons.
That's
and
good.
I don't care what I'm doing. I'll cut out of a meeting and let's go to the batting cage, so I see myself happy and watching my sons, whatever they're doing, so that's what it is. Yep.
It's an incredible journey that you've had. And what's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself throughout the whole thing?
Man, tenacity, when you don't know how far you dig or how far you go or what level it will take you to not quit until you have to keep going, basically. I know that's very cliche too. But there were times on this journey where, I didn't have enough money for hotel rooms when I would travel to like San Francisco, and I sleep on park benches. If I couldn't get all of my meetings in one day, which I tried to, I couldn't afford that hotel room. So, I'd sleep on the bench and we'd have a meeting in the morning, then I'd go home, so moments like that allowed me to understand who I really was and how much I really wanted something, you know what I'm saying? And what I was willing to sacrifice to get it, so, so to answer your question, I learned, the human mind is so much more powerful than you think it is. There's times when you sit around and wonder, how is this going to be done? Or no one's ever done this. Why would it work for you? And then you're able to tell yourself, well, I don't care what everyone else is doing. This is what I want to do, though. And I'll either fail or I'll succeed. But if I don't try, then I'll never know. So, I just I learned about being tenacious and not taking no, at first glance, So, yeah.
I'd say too, like listening to your story, it seems like you've been very intentional with your time. Even like when you had that 7 hours, you were intentional with it, and you were like, no, I'm not going to sit here and wait around, and always taking action, always jumping on something next. I think that's a good quality that a lot of people struggle with as well. So that really stood out to me.
Yeah, you're right. Being intentional, man, being deliberate,
even with your kids.
Thing. Yep. Exactly. Yep.
What
Yep.
I got one more question, and then I want to do a little word association with you real quick.
Okay.
What do you want your legacy to be 50 years from now when your kids are talking about you? What do you want them to say about you?
Man, he was there. He was present. You know,
Hmm.
I don't care about anything else. That I was always present. You know, because not having a father, you learn that. I learned that I learned what presence really meant from my father's absence. And anytime I get off kilter or to this or to that, I go back to, man, I just got to be present. I don't need to have all the answers, or I don't need to, we don't need to wrestle, but I just had to be there present for them. And after everything's said and done, that's all I care about, is they knew I was present for them, and it wasn't a chore either. It was, I wanted to be present for them, so yeah.
All right. So we're going to wrap. Usually we start off our episode with some rapid fire, but we're going to kind of flip it and end yours with some rapid fire word associations here. First thing that comes to your mind before I start getting into people, first thing that comes to your mind, first time you put on that Notre Dame uniform.
Wow, this is real. This is where this is tradition. This is real now. My journey to go to the NFL is real now. That was first thing that came to mind. Yeah.
First time putting on NFL uniform.
How did I make it here? Congratulations.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of, man, life is a bitch. So you got to congratulate yourself along the way different times, or else you'll miss those moments. So I remember thinking, man, congratulations. You came a long way, but you made it.
That's good. All right. Now I'm interested to hear what you got to say with these. Jamal Lewis.
A beast.
Especially you were there the right year.
Yeah, he was a beast, man. I was talking about him the other day, being 260 pounds, chiseled muscle, running a 4.3, but nimble too. Man, he was a beast.
I think that 03 season he had like over 2,000 yards.
Yep.
Y'all had the offensive player of the year, you had the defensive player of the year, and you had the defensive rookie of the year as well with Terrell Suggs. That was a good group.
Yep. Man, that was a great year.
Speaking of him, Terrell Suggs.
That's interesting. Creative. I say creative. Just knowing Terrell since I was 22, he was 20, and just seeing the way he's created a image of himself and a life of himself, and coming into the league, we used to joke that he was so young and naive and immature. He used to just regurgitate everything he saw on BET. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like he didn't have an original bone in his body, but he was still young, trying to fit in with everything. But now to see the way he's created a good life for himself, and, a good, Hall of Fame career for himself, yeah. I love it. So creative. Yeah.
Okay. Jonathan Ogden.
That's a man. He's a man. Yeah. There's a joke all the time. I remember in practice blitzing in one time as a safety blitz, and I jumped for some reason, and Ogden caught me in the air, and I was 230, and he stopped my momentum in the air and threw me the other way. And I remember in film, Rex Ryan, my D coordinator, was like, Sapp, I appreciate your bravery, but I question your intelligence for what you just did, So yeah, so he was a man, a grown man.
Ray Lewis.
A leader. I've never been around a leader like that ever. I don't think there'll ever be another leader like him. Not only did he improve, he made you, he inspired. It was almost like like a rock, one of those rocks that you put in the middle of all the other rocks, and it heats up all the other rocks. Yeah. He's that rock, and I mean, it was intense. He's a leader.
Okay. Ed Reed.
Intelligent, very intelligent, talk about someone who didn't learn how to read till later on in life,
Really?
and started a program to teach adults how to read. One of the most intelligent people I've ever been around. Just the way he's able to look at situations, evaluate film, watch players, and look at the way they do certain things, and then react off of it. And just intelligent. I mean, he's literally the most intelligent player I've ever been around.
All right, 2 more for you. Edgerrin James.
Edge. He's deceiving. Edgerrin. So Ed is probably the most intelligent person, but Edgerrin is probably the smartest. That the whole dreadlock, gold teeth. If you go to his locker, he has the most books in his locker than anyone on the team. All he does is read. I'm talking about thick books too. Yeah. He's the type of person that's like, if I don't know about it, I'm gonna read about it. And he's like, this whole, this is me. This is how I grew up. This is where
Curious
I'm from.
Mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Final one, Peyton Manning.
Oh man, the general. I tell people all the time, Peyton it was almost like he was a savant. The way he could, I remember watching film with him, and he would watch one play like 40, 50 times. And I remember, obviously the safety and the quarterback read off of each other. It's like a dance almost. A lot of people think it's the middle linebacker or the quarterback, but it's technically the safety, because the quarterback wants to know what defense the secondary's in, what coverage we're in. So Peyton was like, hey, come watch film with me. So he watched one play 40, 50 times. And in that play, he would know basically down and distance, the personnel the defense has, and he'd know who's going to tip their hand. That's why he goes through all those gyrations and because someone's going to flinch one way, and he knows if that player flinched that way based on who's in the game, the situation, the down and distance, he knows what defense you're in. And now he has you. We used to say Peyton beat you on Saturday. Before you even played the game, you've already lost, because he knows how to get you to show your hand. And he's the type of player that he'll make you pay for it. It's one thing to get you to show your hand, and but it's another thing to actually execute on the audible too. I mean, so it was fun. It was so fun to watch him play the game, because one, he loved it. It was like playing backyard football for him, Plus to play with a player that played on such a high cerebral level, it was like, man, like this is Hall of Fame right here. This is one of the greatest right here that I'm getting the chance to play with. So I say the general. Yep.
Okay. What final words do you have for our listeners out there?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you guys for listening to me. I'm just a dude, so appreciate you lending your ears. But also, I know times get hard for all of us, but the thing that makes us who we are is our ability not to quit. And if you can understand that, and understand that if you just keep going, something good would happen. Something good will happen. A lot of people just quit, too soon. If you keep going and you keep believing in the reason why you're going, which is important too, then things will turn around. I'm a witness to that, man. Like I said, I was on park benches, holding on to my laptop, and things changed real quick just because I didn't quit. It was nothing special. The only special thing about it was the ability to have the foresight not to quit. That's all it was, man. So I'd tell that to the listeners, man. No matter what you're going through, I pray that it gets easier for you, but don't quit, and you'll be okay.
I like it. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your schedule to join us here for this episode. Folks, that is going to conclude this episode of the Shadows Podcast.